Okay, so now we're going to move on to bringing some green screen footage in from Dragon Frame, garbage matting, key lighting, and layering up and changing things for that. So let's go into After Effects, and the first thing we need to do is make a new composition. New composition, because I'm running from Dragon Frame, I am going to go for the 24 frames a second, which matches my output. I'm going to call it something sensible like green screen. Say okay to that. Then we've got our primary composition in place. So now let's bring in our footage. So in the drive where you saved it, you want to bring in the cut green screen footage. So what we do, if we select the first one, because it's a sequence, if we make sure that this is highlighted, the TIFF sequence, then what After Effects will do will bring that in as a sequence, a piece of sequence media. You can get this slightly different icon. So the composition is this kind of film icon, and then this is many, you can see it's like many images, and that's how you know it's a TIFF sequence. But if we look up here, you can see it's come in at 30 frames a second, which is no good. That means it's going to be running at the wrong frame rate. So we need to right click, and we need to interpret footage on the main, and we need to change that down to 24 frames a second, and then that means everything is running at the same rate. So say okay to that. So that's at 24 frames a second, as is our composition. Brilliant. So I do want to make this into a new composition because I want to do things to this before I then bring it into my main composition. So if you go new comp from selection, it's given it the name of cut, which is absolutely fine. And now we've got our footage in here. If we hit the space bar, it'll just run through our 14 frames. And we can see we've got this ugly plasticine going on, which we need to take out. We've got all this green screen that we need to take out. Make sure we save this. So before we start doing a lot of work, we need to save it. So we've got everything set up. So again, green cap, something sensible for the name so you can find it later, and just click save on that. Now, the easiest thing to do is to apply an effect called Keylight. And just type in Keylight, and it's Keylight 1.2. And from the effects, we need to bring that over, and I always like to drag it onto the name. Now you could drag it onto here or onto here, but I like to drag it onto the name so I know exactly where I'm taking it. So once the Keylight's on, for green screen, what you do is you grab the dropper, click on the green, and it will do quite a good job of getting rid of all that green. If I press play, we have a bit of a problem with this. The plasticine underneath needs to be removed, and for the purposes of this demonstration, we relate that to, you might need a rig, or you've got some extraneous stuff in your shot that you need to take out. So instead of doing Keylight first, and we're going to take the Keylight off, just press delete over there. We are going to make what's called a garbage mat, and that literally does that. It's going to get rid of the garbage, going to get rid of the stuff we don't need, and then we're going to let Keylight do the rest of the work. So this is a bit of a balance between making your getting rid of the stuff you don't want, but also making After Effects do part of the work as well, because you could mask your work all the way through. But I'm only going to do 14 frames here, and you'll see how long that takes. So we need to make sure that we're doing the minimum amount for the maximum result. So grab your pen tool, make sure you are on the first frame here, and as soon as we click, what we should get is this kind of pinky, salmony pink colour. And down here we are still on the cup layer. If you get a shape layer pop up here, or if when you do your next point, you start to get a red shape, what you've done is you've made a shape layer. So delete the shape layer, click on this layer name, and then get your pen tool, and it should then be pink. So we might need to go in a bit closer. So we're going to zoom in with the Control and Plus. We're going to move that up with the space bar and click and drag, just like you would with other Adobe programs. And then I'm going to make my next point here, and to make it slightly curved, I click and I drag. Or a straight one, just click. Curved one, I click and I drag. Straight, straight, straight. But what we need to do is we need the minimum amount of points. So if we make too many, we have to move them all. So if you're following along, try and make a similar shape to me. Now I'm going around the bottom just to take out anything below that line, and you need to make sure that you close your path. As soon as you close your path, what should happen is the other stuff should disappear. So it thinks you've chosen what you want to keep, when in fact we've highlighted what we want to get rid of. So if we twirl this down, what you'll find is we now have a mask, which is what we're after. And instead of adding, we want to subtract, or you can invert. Okay? So we'll leave it on inverted, and that is my first frame for my mask. So what I need to do, obviously, if I press play now, you can see that although on the first frame it's fine, my cut moves and I need to move my path with it. So back to the beginning again, where we've got our path as we want it. We need to twirl this down, and we can turn the stopwatch on so we can keyframe the mask path. Now this was shot on 2s, so I know I can go to frame 1. Don't forget 0 counts as the first frame in this, so it does mess up your maths a bit. But on frame 1, I can make a duplicate path so that I've got that saved. And the reason I do that is because it moves on frame 2, and if I just let the path do the in-between points, it will actually move, so it won't match frame 2. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I do my next path here, there we go. If I do my next path here, so say move it over here, so obviously it's automatically made that keyframe. I'd obviously tidy up the areas, but what it does is the path tries to move and it doesn't get it right. Okay, so I'm going to take that off, go back to the beginning where it's right, make a frame here, move on to frame 2, and I'm going to move my mask. So if I double click on the pink line, on one of the pink lines, I can move the whole path. So I'm just using the arrow keys on the keyboard here to get it kind of close. And I'm going to go in a bit closer and move the points. So click off to move the points, or escape. Click here and then click back on the points. So it's fiddly moving the points, but after a bit of work with it, you'll get the hang of it. Okay, so we're going to move about quite close so we can get these points in the right place. Moving the handles, and you need to go along and do all 14 frames. So this is where we want to do as minimum, why I was saying we only want a few points. If you imagine you have thousands of frames, you're going to have to do a lot of moving. So again, that's my frame 3 done, if you like, because it counts. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and I know that this next frame is the same. So I'm going to put a keyframe here. So I've got my first 4 frames keyed with a mask. So it needs to move as tightly as possible, and now I'm going to continue doing the rest. Double click on a line if I want to move the whole thing. As soon as I move it, my keyframe comes in. Shift to move it 10 pixels, and the keys and the cursor keys, and that will move 1 pixel at a time. Make sure you move in and out so you can see where your points, how your points are getting on. And if you need to come off of that, press escape, click on the outside, click on the inside, click on a point, and then you can alter the points. It is quite fussy, but you will get used to it. And that means you can refine your edges and your masks and make them really good and tight around your objects, so you get a lovely clean mask. Let's move that one down there. Obviously I need to make sure this is coming down as well. I can go back and change masks, but be aware you don't want to be adding points, because After Effects then tries to calculate the shapes in between, so that can get tricky. So another keyframe here, because that's my second pair. Oh, and then this moves right round. So you can twist it around if you want. So you have to double click on a line, and then that means you can move the whole thing. Obviously it should fit. Escape when you've moved your transform. And then we can do like that. Then move along, another keyframe. Move along. Let's move the whole thing again. Double click on the line. We're at the right angle, so we shouldn't need to do too much inside. Okay, next one. Move it along a frame. Trying to get next one. Let's get that line. It's twisted again, so we'll just rotate from the corner. I need to just finesse these points here. So if you can't get hold of a point, click out into the space and then come back in by clicking on a point on the mask. And then that should give you access to move the points individually. So bear in mind I've only got 14 frames here. So if you've got a lot more frames, grab yourself a Wacom tablet, put some good music on, and just go through your animation. There we go. And when you get to the end, don't forget, because it sees 0 as 1, you'll get to 13 and then you won't be able to go any further. But just make sure that your path is now following along with your animation. And if you've got, and if your path seems to be moving in between, look a little bit closer. Make sure you have got a keyframe on all of the points you need to. Like if you're working on 3s, you'll only need to put one on 1 and 3. But if you're working on 2s, you need to put one on every one, which is no more work. You just have to click add a keyframe over here. So now this is keyed with a path. I can put the Keylight back on, and that will get rid of all the rest of the green. Drop a tool, in we go. Lovely job. Now then, you can see we've got a slight bit of fuzzing here. And if we look not at the final result up here, but either at the screen mat, these are my favourites, or at status, that shows you what is seen as clear, as opaque, and as undetermined. So you can see where we've got a few problems. Anything in red, it knows it's a mask, so it can ignore that. And there's only one bit of white here, so we need to refine our green Keylight. So there are lots, there's lots of explanation on a really good green screen intro on lynda.com, and I am going to put that link somewhere on the VLE so you can find that. So I'm not going to go through every single thing down here, but there are a lot of things where you can choke the mask back, you can roll it back, you can blur the edges, you can feather the mask out or in. So go through that there rather than here. I'm going to show you my two favourite bits, which should get us a good result on this, and that is to clip black and clip white. So if I roll the clip white down, so if I roll the black clip up, yeah, it's a bit of fiddling about. So if we put that on screen mat, then we can see that we need to just fiddle about. So that's what we want. We want that all white in there and that all black round the outside. So final result, that should be pretty good. So now it goes along. We've gotten rid of the green. We don't have too much green in here, which is pretty good. You can do all sorts of despills and choose colour in here to despill. So look through that Linda if you want to look through the full gamut of all the stuff you can do in Keylight. But now I've keyed my cup, I'm going to go back to my main composition, back to where I've got my project bin, and I'm going to put my cup comp in here. There it is. And then I'm going to bring in my media for the background. I'm going to use the running track this time. Just note that this is quite a small file, so you've got all this information at the top here. It's quite a small file, so I'm going to have to scale it up. If you are going to be using a background, make sure it's either the right size or bigger than the right size, because this running track, we might get a few jaggies going on in the background. So let's scale that up. You can either drag a corner, hold shift down to constrain it. You can probably see what I mean by the jaggies if you look at the number 3 and the number 2 there. But just for this demonstration, that is fine. I'm not going to be publishing this anywhere. So there we go. So there's our little cup rolling around on our running track. So obviously this is quite short, and we're actually going to make another composition running on the same things. This doesn't need to be so long. We only need it to be maybe 3 seconds, just long enough so we can play. And I'm going to put the cup comp in here, so we get 1, and again, and again, and again. So we'll drag these out so they're all perfectly aligned. And then what will happen is the animation will repeat. Now you can loop some image sequences, but you can't loop an image sequence that has been keyed and has a path on, because you'll have to redo the path. One more, maybe one more. So there's one more. So actually this composition, I either need to make it a little bit longer or a little bit short. So it should be 222. We've got 14 frames to add on, so it actually needs to be 3 and 12. So let's just change our composition settings. So if I put it to 3 and 12, when I pull this one along to the end, it should fit lovely. So you do have to do a little bit of maths. There we go. So if I now bring this comp, I haven't named it, this comp in here, we get a little bit more animation. So now we can move it across the screen with our position, bring it back to the beginning, home button to bring back to position, keyframe number 1, let's move that over there, move to the end of our little bit of animation and bring it over to there. So now if we watch that through, there it goes, lovely job. So now I'm going to put a copy of that, so click on there, up to edit, duplicate, and that will duplicate everything. So what we've got is the same movement. So just like we did with the bike, I'm going to make this one, if we look at P, if we look at position, I'm going to make it finish a bit quicker just by dragging the keyframes in. There we go. And his position needs to be slightly up. So we're just going to use these to go up. And we're up to 361. So let's make it 360. Come to this one, this keyframe. And again, I can just type in 360. And that will put it exactly the same position. I know that this should be running actually slightly behind, so we put that behind. Back to the beginning. Here we go. And he runs past. And just like we did with the bike, I am going to recolor this one. So if we do its color change, I'm looking for change color onto the actual name of the layer. I find that easiest. I'm going to change the brown and slightly change that there. Change the tolerance. Then that'll take all the color in. Let's make it a bit more bright. Change it to green. Wow. And over they go. So one thing I didn't show you before, which I will just show you now, let's go back into the cup, it's probably where you'd use it. So if you're looking at your green screen result, what you can do is you can take a quick snapshot. So if I take a snapshot here, and then if I turn the key light off, what I can do is just have a quick look and see how well that's doing. So this shows me my snapshot, and this shows me without the effects. So you can try different effects and see how well they work, which is really useful to know. So that really wraps up our green screen cup comp, where we've brought in footage as a sequence from Dragon Frame. And I will put the link to the advanced green screen explanations below or on the VLE.